notice, might be on our way. Gershenson.
Here.
Taylor should be here shortly. Erickson Gall.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Cabell. Here. Joliet is absent with notice. Gingell is absent with notice. Lubes.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item is approving the minutes from August 20th.
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner, who would like to support that? Commissioner Ann Erickson Galt. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our minutes are approved. Our next item is approving the agenda. I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Ann Erickson Galt. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our agenda is approved. We've arrived at our first public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to comment on items on the agenda? Seeing none, our first public comment is closed. We move to communications, and there are two items under communications, both grant applications. One is an exception to MEDC's Mobility Deployment Grant Partnership, and the second item is to the State Court Administrative Office for the 2025 Access and Visitation Program. Any comments or questions about the items under communication? All in favor of
I need a motion in a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a motion by Commissioner Ann Erickson Galt and a second by Commissioner Nelson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our communications are approved. We have one item from the prosecutor's office. It's a grant acceptance from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services for the fiscal year 2025 victim rights. Who do we have here to talk? Oh, I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Gershenson. So,
Good morning. I'm Mary Larkin on behalf of the Victim Services Division of the Prosecutor's Office.
what can you tell us about this item?
So this is a grant award from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services in the amount of $796,037. And this funds 5 of our positions in the Victim Services Division. This is the 33rd consecutive year for this grant award. I'm happy to answer any questions, but just very briefly, what it allows us to do is have direct victim contact and accompaniment in court of victims when they're coming for hearings or trials. It also enables us to meet our statutory obligation of notifying victims who ask to be notified what is happening in their case. So we send out a computer-generated letter every time there is an event scheduled in their case. And we're available and we answer questions all day long from victims asking for explanations about the hearings. We also make referrals to community resources that they may need counseling for or other additional resources. We also actively refer to the State of Michigan's Crime Victim Compensation Fund, and that enables victims to be made whole and reimbursed for any out-of-pocket loss that they have for injuries, mental health treatment as a result of the crime. So that's a brief synopsis. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
comments or questions regarding this item? Well-needed, well-established grant, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, roll call, please. Or prompt the vote.
Yeah.
I miss those days, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm.
21st century.
Go back to your previous tab. Hit the e-vote button. Okay, so we'll just call it. Nelson.
Yes.
Gershenson.
Yes.
Cabell.
Yes.
Erickson Gall.
Yes.
Wow. Loops.
Yes,
You have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
all right, the vote is unanimous, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next item is a circuit court recommendation for the deletion of 2 grant-funded positions due to the Raise the Age grant funding expiration. I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Gersonson. So thank you, welcome.
Hi. So 3 years ago, when the Raise the Age legislation came into play, Department of Health and Human Services gave us a grant to last 3 years. We've renewed it every year since, but this is the end of it at the end of '24. That grant was to pay for the new legislation that had 17 and older coming into the juvenile court. Since then, the way that they are handling this payment model, that was really just designed to tide us over until they modify the child care fund. The modifications to the child care fund for the 75% reimbursement for community-based services are meant to offset the funds that we're gonna lose from losing this Raise the Age grant. So it's really just the end of something that was expected to end. And we do have 2 positions that we have held open to move those 2 caseworkers into, so we're not losing actual people. And those workers will be assigned normal caseloads.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's really great to hear. I know a lot of times individuals seek out those grant-funded positions, and that's not always the case. So the fact that we value the work that they've done, and then having those opportunities to have them move into those existing vacant positions says a lot. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, knowing this was coming, we've tried to plan for it for a while, and we do value the work that our caseworkers do. Also, just so everyone here is aware, nothing to do with the grant, but Friday is Constitution Day. We will have a large number of students coming in from several different school districts. If anybody is going to be in the building, it will be going from 9 o'clock in the morning until about noon.
In our auditorium?
Part of it will be in your auditorium, part of it will be in our courtrooms.
What time?
It starts at 9.
Okay.
And we can get you a schedule of events for anyone who would like it. I can send it to Barbara for distribution.
Great.
Maybe.
Thank you. Commissioner Gersonson, followed by Commissioner Cavell. No? Okay. Commissioner Cavell?
Thank you. Hey, Grace.
Hi.
How many youth and family caseworkers do we have in the circuit court?
So if we just talk about the youth and family caseworkers that were previously covered by our child care fund, we have roughly 31 with the supervisors, and the supervisors do assist in covering the caseload. So we have 31 under juvenile court, and then we have roughly another 31 in our youth assistance in what we'll call our informal court or diversion program.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I guess,
Yeah.
is that enough? If so, why? If not, why not?
I'm gonna say that we don't have enough because as we're shifting kids from being in facilities, right, from sending kids to the village, sending them to out-of-home placements, as we move those kids from those placement facilities back into community-based care, which all of the research shows is better for the development of the child, as we move those kids, we need more caseworkers to watch those kids. Right now I just asked for new numbers for youth assistance. I actually have one youth assistance caseworker who has 160 kids on their caseload. 160 kids is not manageable by anyone, no matter how competent or how many resources their supervisor provides, it's not. We do have a requirement from the state to have a new quality assurance person. That is part of the legislation, the juvenile justice reform. And we have an RFP out right now to contract with someone to be our quality assurance specialist. I anticipate that one of the first things they will say is that 160 kids is too many. So we did, as you may recall, with the child care fund, put a placeholder for 3 caseworkers from the state to fund. From Department of Health and Human Services, they'll pay us 75%. We are probably gonna be coming back to you, I would anticipate, by the end of next quarter, to potentially ask for additional caseworkers in youth assistance. We care about our youth assistance program, and now that it's finally covered by child care fund, I really think we have an opportunity to really fund it properly.
I absolutely agree with that. Years ago, we had more caseworkers. Youth assistance was creative when they had to reduce the number of caseworkers. So now the caseworkers share different cities. 160 cases is too many, 100 cases are too many.
Oh, for sure. I think really 40 is probably more like a respectable standard for diversion cases, and we're waiting for the State Court Administrative Office to give us some standards, right? They're working on developing those. But when you think about like intensive, the standard has always been 20 for kids that are on intensive probation. We can't actually get reimbursed if we have more than 20 kids on an intensive caseload. So that's a requirement. For these other kids in the diversion programs, absolutely that is too many. I think our average across all, because we have some that only have, 20 kids, right? Where we haven't had a worker for a long time and nobody is referring kids there. But I think our average, when we look at it, is somewhere around 65, and I think that's too many.
Thank you. Commissioner Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Chair. Is this purely a funding issue, or would we, if given adequate funding, would we have difficulty recruiting enough caseworkers?
I don't think we'll have trouble recruiting. The last few times that we have posted for a caseworker, we've had a reasonable response. And so I don't know that recruiting is the issue.
Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What do you think are the biggest barriers
To having all of the
to
workers
having
that we need.
adequate workers to fit the caseloads?
I believe that it would be properly funding, yes. And now that we are getting 75% reimbursed, and I think you'll recall, I think we're gonna actually receive more funds overall, right? And if we keep reinvesting those funds that we get back into these positions and into the program, we continue to get 75% back from the state. So it's really the best return on investment that there is.
Thank you. And it's a part prevention, so that we're proactive and not reactive and saves money in the long run.
Right, we, our community-based partners that we have with youth assistance, because we have the coordinating councils, they'll be focusing more on prevention, on trying to stop kids before they get into, where they need a referral. And then our youth assistance workers are focusing on the kids. Once we have a referral for services, they're really focused on trying to keep them from being in the formal court or coming under the jurisdiction of the court.
Right. Commissioner Gershenson?
Just for clarification, did you say we get 75% of their salary back?
And their fringe benefits, as long as they're working on community-based programs.
What's the out-of-pocket then?
For a caseworker, I would say that the cost, sorry, I should know this, and it might actually be in the financial document that Haley prepared, if you look at what the 100%.
Yeah, 75% of 75,000.
Plus their benefits though, and I think our average caseworker, it's probably, our out-of-pocket is somewhere around 35,000 for a caseworker with benefits.
4 is 25. Which is what I was trying to say in the budget meetings when I was
Yeah.
talking 75, but that guy Brett or whatever was
Yes.
confusing the point, is that $1 into this will give us 75 cents back.
It does.
And it's preventing, like Chair said, preventing having to spend $210 million a year on the sheriff, because now these people, no disrespect, but because those folks that then get into this early don't end up having to meet the sheriff later on.
Many of our referrals actually do come from law enforcement, where law enforcement is trying to divert the kids from getting into more serious trouble and trying to help them, get services early on, because really that's so important to catch things when they're small, right?
So if they need 50 more caseworkers, that's a huge ROI. Because we're only,
Significant.
no, but I'm just saying, whatever she
I think he's
needs,
just throwing out a number, yes.
it's actually a quarter of that cost. It's
Right,
1/4 the actual cost.
that is true.
How many more do you think you need?
I know that when I met with Liz, who is the chief of casework, prior to preparing the budget, we decided at a minimum that 3 caseworkers was probably going to be the recommendation. She may say we need more, but I think it depends on how our caseloads continue to climb, because we are seeing an increase in diversion caseloads and things going to youth assistance. We're seeing an increase in referrals, especially for mental health related issues.
Thank you.
I agree, and I commonly say, many of you have heard me say this, so I have one son who's a prison guard and one son who's a state trooper, and I'm a social worker. So my kids will tell me, Mom, if you don't do your job, I have to arrest them. And the other one will say, then I have to take care of them. That's how it works.
Yeah,
Commissioner Nelson.
I just want to capitalize off of what Commissioner Cavell was saying. So Commissioner Cavell, there were conversations that were had in regards to looking at caseloads during finance hearings?
Yeah, with the child care fund in particular, because there's, like Chris was saying, a law change from a 50% reimbursement to 75 if you're doing community-based
Yes.
programming. But that's also to incentivize us to do what the data and research suggests we do.
And what was the end result of those conversations?
Everyone, I don't know, other people
Have
were
we
in
discussed
finance.
it yet?
You mean so 2 weeks ago we had the budget hearings where we brought this up.
Correct.
And I mean, they're talking about it all the time.
But have you had further conversations about this with our leadership?
I guess, yeah, and just that we need to put more money into this, but
Would love to hear more.
oh, sure, yeah.
anyone who's interested in learning more about the court or how our funding works or the juvenile court reforms, we would love to have you come. I can arrange for you to meet with any of our judges, look at our budget in detail, talk to our caseworkers. We would absolutely, prepare a little agenda for you. Whatever topic you're interested in, we would love to share information, and we want to promote transparency in the court.
And truly, the biggest concern, I think, Commissioner Cavell and Madam Chair, you as well mentioned it. Having that many individuals on a caseload as a behavioral health provider, thankfully in my line of work, we are capped by some statutes of literally 15. But I see day in and day out the importance of having those lower caseloads and the changes that take place in light of that, because obviously the smaller your caseload, the more intensity that you're able to provide the individual, their family, and their support groups. And so to hear even the average of 65 is unfathomable in regards to a true change that takes place. And it just is pretty eye-opening and mind-blowing for sure. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Would you prompt the vote, please?
Gershenson?
Yes.
You have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Our next 6 items are from the Sheriff's Office. The first is an amendment to the MCOLS Public Safety Academy Assistance Program. The next is a grant acceptance from Michigan State Police for the 2024 Continuing Professional Education Pilot Program. The third item is an amendment to the interlocal agreement with OCHN for the Jail Alliance with the JAWS program. The fourth is an acceptance of a donation for 2 support canine dogs named Maggie and Chip. The last 2 are grant applications. The first to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Anti-Terrorism Emergency Assistance Program regarding the Oxford High School shooting. And the last is a grant acceptance from the state of Michigan for the 2025 Automobile Theft Prevention Authority Program. I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, who would like to second. Support from Commissioner Erickson Galt. We have our Undersheriff and Guy up here to talk to these items.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So the first item is amendment number 3 to the MCOLS Public Safety Academy Assistance Program. We've been here a few times this year. This is the additional funding we have been getting to offset the cost of recruits in the academy. This year, or this last installment, we applied for 5 recruits, and unfortunately we only got funding for 4 because this program has been very popular and the funding has been exhausted. So this will be our last acceptance for this, but we are getting $96,000. The next item is a new funding source from the Michigan State Police. It's called Continuing Professional Education Pilot Program. So what it's requiring are the MCOLS certified officers to have continuing education, which we do every year with in-service training anyway, but the pilot program is giving us $308,500 in 2024, they're expected to do 12 hours of additional training. And then future funding years, they're anticipating a requirement of 24 hours of additional training per officer. The next item is amendment number 1 for our Jail Alliance with Support Program, JAWS program in the jail. This is an agreement with Oakland Community Health Network. And the amendment is for fiscal year 25. It continues 1 full-time inmate caseworker position and 2 part-time inmate caseworker positions. And not to exceed amount is $218,767. And they address inmate mental health needs in this program. The next item is acceptance of a donation of 2 new therapy canines. So we have Maggie and Chip. I'm sure a lot of people have seen them on Facebook. And they are going to be assigned to dispatch and the Rochester Hills substation. The next item is also new funding. It's a follow-up from the Oxford High School shooting. So it's anti-terrorism emergency assistance program funding. It's a pass-through from the federal government to Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. We've been working with them for a couple years. There have been several variations of the request and for funding. And they finally came back with funding for to create 2 Deputy 2 positions. It will only be for 1 year at this point for fiscal year 25. It will include the positions, travel and training for them. It's $344,602. This money is really a supplement. It's designed to provide available resources and services for entities like us that have responded to acts of terrorism or mass violence. So, long time coming, but we're excited that it finally came through and materialized. The last item is our annual acceptance for the FY25 Automobile Theft Prevention Authority, also ATPA program. So this total program is about 2.8 million. It's 1.7 million in grant funding plus grant match. And it's for the sheriff's office to continue 2 sergeant positions, 5 full-time deputy positions, 1 PT&E deputy position, and then another position that's assigned to the city of the Pontiac contract. We also have 1 deputy assigned to Detroit's team, and then Detroit's award also includes a deputy for us. So this is a multi-jurisdictional task force that also includes Farmington Hills, Hazel Park, Royal Oak, Southfield, and Waterford, and they're all responsible for their own grant match, as in prior years.
Thank you. I have a question about the continuing professional education pilot program. What subjects are in the 12 hours of additional training required? Or topics?
In 12 hours, right now, it's 4 hours of commission designated training categories and then 8 hours of agency selected training categories as per guidelines. So we're still working with MCOLs to figure out exactly what those mean, but that's how the 12 hours is broken down.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cavell?
Hey, I have a question on D, E, and then F. So the canines, I was looking through this and they're gonna cost $5,000 a year. And then you have, from talking to budget people, 15 dogs, or these will be dogs 14 and 15?
I think that's right.
I think that's about right, yeah.
So, and then I was talking to other people and we don't have a gift policy. So this is a way that then we've inadvertently raised costs by $75,000 a year for these dogs. And
Well, there's no budget amendment included in this, so they didn't.
exactly, that's how it happened, and we didn't realize that it cost $75K to feed 15 dogs that are purebred, right? They're
Well, this
Kingston,
is a-
St.
this-
Charles or whatever.
This is an MOU with the union, that's how it started, so
Sure,
that's how.
but I'm just saying that it still is $75,000 to pay for all these dogs.
That's what's budgeted, yes.
Yep. So I'm gonna vote no on this until we figure out a gift policy. Cause not that this was some sort of malicious intent, but just, you know, one thing leads to another and now we're spending $75,000 for dog food.
It's
And
also
we
for
don't have a
therapy
rule
training
about that.
and well, and we are following the gift policy, so we do have a
Sure.
gift policy, so this is a donation of those dogs. So they're being, the initial cost and care is paid for, and then we accept the donation of those and then take on the continuing care, just like we do with the regular canines,
Right.
yep.
So I want to amend the gift policy, I guess, to be more exact, so that we better understand these costs before we accept this stuff. As well as not just dogs, but drones and other such things. E, my question is, in the grant, it talks about provide direct victim services. How is this different than the OCHN, like recovery center that they and we have funded to help provide victim services? Because this, part of their job is victim services.
And this is designed for the people that responded to it, so it's anybody that responded to the incident, not necessarily, so it's an expanded victim pool, if you will.
Okay, so when it says court advocacy, that's cops that will be in court for Oxford?
What page are you looking at?
The report to the board, which was taken from the grant, so. Yeah.
Okay, I can get further clarification on what they're saying for court advocacy, but yes, I imagine that it would be for anybody that had to respond.
I think this item is related to our sheriff's comments in the past about how our officers were in need of support from the various traumas they've witnessed and experienced because they will work as peer support and wellness staff.
And that's, so we started meeting with the federal team, I wanna say a couple weeks after the incident. And then they pass it through to the state, and then we've had several meetings with them. So it's been with Captain Hill, who oversees training. There have been many, many iterations of this, and then it finally came through, and then this is the final product. So yeah, some of it is kind of post things happening, but the initial intent was to handle all of the trauma and everything that they were gonna have to go through, including the court appearances, because then obviously you relive every moment of that day.
So what is if this is a 1-year job for 2 people, what happens if this isn't renewed? What will those 2 people do?
They'll fill vacancies.
Okay. And are these new people you're bringing on, or are you just helping Captain Hill and Lieutenant Workman kind of work their process? Or is this going to be 2 new staff?
It'll be within the sheriff's office, so what you said initially, we won't have 2 new hires just for this.
Gotcha, okay, thanks. And then for the F, is this the program where Deputy Reckling was responding to the stolen car? This is that program?
Yes, he was a member of this team.
Okay. I'm gonna vote against this as well, because I feel like unsatisfied in understanding how he died doing this job.
Commissioner Gershenson?
So I wanted to talk about F as well. Can we separate?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So all these positions that this grant money funds are strictly for this program, this automobile recovery or do they do all these employees, do they do other things as well?
No, they're specifically assigned to this task force.
Right.
So 2 sergeants' positions, 5 deputy positions, all of them are involved in automobile theft?
Yes.
And there's a north end crew and a south end crew, that's why there's 2 sergeants.
Wow, so we need all these people, it's that big of an issue.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow, okay, and then, well, maybe you could explain, so Deputy Reckland, how that whole thing unfolded, that he ended up being alone?
He wasn't alone.
Was there someone with him in the car?
Not in the car, but there were our other deputies were right in that same area with him. They just weren't right at that same
Okay,
spot.
so when
at
he
that
was
moment.
ambushed, did people respond to
Yes.
that?
Yes, Detroit came, and then our guys, like I said, were probably 2 or 3 streets over. Normally in these situations, what happens is they just jump out of the car and run, and they leave the stolen car. Now we've recovered the stolen car. In this instance, they jumped out and started shooting.
So I think I too would like to learn a little bit more. This is a lot of money and a lot of staff that is involved in this automobile theft prevention. So I think I'd like to get a little bit better understanding of this grant and how this program operates and the funding. So maybe we could do that offline, or if anybody else was interested.
This isn't the first year we've approved
No, I
this
know, but it really just
multi-jurisdiction
came to
grant.
my attention at the funeral of this officer. I really, it made total sense to me, of course, but then I'm looking at how much money it is, which is a lot.
There's a lot of stolen cars
I
in this area.
Yes, years and years and years ago, I've been the victim of 2 stolen cars, so it's, yes, not just one. So it happens.
Oh, I know it happens. I just didn't realize the amount of staff and the amount of money that's put into this program. So I would like to learn a little bit more about it.
Thank you. Commissioner Erickson Galt?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I echo my colleagues' comments. I'm concerned not just about the money. I'm concerned that we're putting a lot of resources into basically recovering property that is typically insured and can be replaced. And I'm concerned, and maybe you can, satisfy my concerns, that we're putting people's life in danger to recover stuff, which bothers me on a fundamental level, that our officers, and perhaps even in some places, civilians would be put in danger to try to recover things which most of us have insured and can be replaced. So can you speak to that a little bit?
I'd like to jump in first. There are many people who have PLPD and that doesn't replace their vehicles at
That's
all,
their
and
choice.
whatever they have in there.
But everyone does have car insurance, that's fair.
Depends on the age of
Kenny,
the
can you
vehicle.
repeat? I didn't hear what you said.
I said, some people have PLPD.
Meaning it's
And
not.
that doesn't replace
They have
their
they're
vehicle.
just insuring for liability, not for the actual replacement of the vehicle.
Right, but then is a 2015 Chevy Malibu worth it?
Right.
And I drive a 2010 vehicle that's amazing with 230,000 miles. My insurance company, AAA, won't allow me to have full coverage anymore. But I love my car and it's not going anywhere.
But what I think Ann's saying, and what I agree with you, Ann, is that someone died to save your 2010 whatever. Is that the conversation, is that the money we want to be getting from the state? Is that the work we want these 7 people to be doing?
I understand
And at
what
what
you're saying.
cost?
It's a
Well, it's
moral,
right?
it's a different decision than we're spending money on here. Do we want to pursue that? So that's a different conversation.
And my question is a little bit more fundamental. Do we have these dangerous situations typically, or is this completely out of the blue to have this kind of an officer being put in the line of fire to recover stuff?
I guess I would answer that to say any job we do is dangerous. Somebody could die right now in a jail. It hopefully won't happen, but any facet of our job is dangerous. This was a very, I don't even want to say unfortunate, it was a tragic event that occurred. It's not what normally occurs, but it does occur. I mean, we weren't the first ones to have this happen to. But I guess I'd say we can't look at it from that standpoint because, again, any facet of our job is dangerous. It doesn't matter if it's an undercover officer, a patrol officer, or a deputy in jail.
Commissioner Gerson.
Well, I really do appreciate that, but I also want to ask you, so have there been other deaths in this auto recovery program that you know of?
Not in this one specifically. I guess I'd have to look back and think, but I know there have been other officers shot for recovering any kind of stolen property. It just occurred
For sure, right.
across the country, so.
Right, but this is specifically for automobiles.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to vote on, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Nelson.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple questions for items D and E. So as far as for item D, how many support dogs does the Oakland County Sheriff's presently have, including these two new
I
canines?
believe it's 15.
I was gonna say, I think we're up to 15, 14 or 15.
14 or 15?
Yeah.
Okay. And then just to get some clarification, so is the therapy canine program that's referenced in the background documents, is that the same as the training unit, or are those two separate?
Two separate, although we kind of run the therapy out of, Captain Hill, who's in charge of the training unit, oversees the
Is it training unit for humans or training units for canines? And I apologize.
Oh, I'm
though.
sorry.
That's okay.
The training reference in here is probably the training for the canines.
So there's a specific training unit for canines?
No, they
Training that
attend,
they go to.
yeah, they attend a certification training, but it's overseen by the training unit
Okay,
at the
okay,
sheriff's office.
thank you. All right, I know that's a silly thing, but just want to make sure I understand this because I'll capitalize into how I phrase the next question.
We do not have canine trainers in the sheriff's office.
Thank you.
We attend a separate
Perfect.
therapy training.
Perfect. So kind of going off of Commissioner Cavall, you sparked my brain for a minute. Because, you know, you look at donations, right? And especially in this case, $7,000 for two canine dogs. But at the end of the day, what are the costs that we're responsible for maintaining them? So I see that the cost of food, the veterinary care, grooming, boarding when necessary, equipment, and other related items for the canines will be paid for by the sheriff's office. And it says that the estimated cost is $5,000 per year per dog. Where did Commissioner Cavall, you get, I think you said 75?
So 5,000 times 15 dogs is 75,000, which I'll just note is the exact same cost of that caseworker that Chris was talking about.
So I appreciate you making those connections. I'm having some of those connections myself. How many canines are donated since the onset of the program since 2021? Do we know that?
I believe all
All of
15
them.
were.
So like every year though, it seems like we're getting business brought before us that two more canines have been graciously donated, right? Do we know since the onset of the program that was created in 2021, are we getting 5, canines a year, 10 canines a year? Like, is there any trend in the number of canines that are being donated?
No, right now we have a list of people that have asked to sponsor. So it kind of, we have a list of sponsors and then we have a list of people that would like to have one assigned to them in the sheriff's office. So it's the sheriff's discretion to say, hey, are we going to add any more, expand this program, assign them to another unit? Because obviously there's different places within the sheriff's office. A lot of the substations that needed them that have school resource officers that, wanted them in those areas.
Sure.
And then obviously dispatch is a very, very high stressful area and
Sure.
they've been kind of.
And I don't want to
invaluable. Yeah.
undermine the importance, I know we've had and have heard since 2021, the importance of the role that these support and therapy dogs have provided, especially in times of tragedy for many of our workers. I don't want to underestimate or discount that by any means. So just as one last clarifying question, paid by the sheriff's office, what does that mean? Where are the funds coming from?
Well, we have the budget with the deputy union agreement, they established the $5,000 per dog, and that's when the initial budget amendment was made. So we don't have a budget of $75,000 at this point for therapy canines. This one, they did not approve a budget amendment, so we're getting these dogs and we have to absorb these two within our current budget.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. I'm gonna jump then to item E. Just for clarification, is there any relationship between this item of business and the $500,000 resolution that we approved during our last board meeting last week?
They're two different items.
No.
So
No?
there isn't, because, and the reason.
There was nothing.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And the reason why I ask is because, in the background summary documents, it makes a point to say that the peer support and wellness coordinators will provide support to the local law enforcement agencies who responded to the Oxford High School shooting and will conduct intentional, documented, regular outreach to first responders that responded to the Oxford High School incident and provide training on vicarious trauma. So there's no attachment whatsoever
What we
between the
approved at the
resolution
board
last week.
meeting was an investigation.
Audit,
This
like
is,
kind of audit.
this item is support for people involved with the Oxford shooting.
I see. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, okay, so we're going to pull items D and F out of the sheriff's recommendation to vote on independently. So our first vote will be for items A, B, C, and E.
B, C, and E. Okay.
Well, would you prompt that
Yep.
vote?
Madam Chair, could you clarify that one more time? What are we voting on? What items?
A, B, C, E.
Thank you. Aaron, it was the first time it worked when I hit e-vote.
Yeah, go ahead and hit that E vote button if you didn't get a prompt.
I got it.
Oh, you got it.
I did.
Yeah. So, Cabell, could you hit your E vote button in the upper left?
I already did and I
You already did?
voted.
Oh, I got it. We got them all in. All right, you have 68, 0 nays.
All right. Those motions carry, thank you. Our next vote will be for the acceptance of donation for 2 support canine dogs. We had a motion for everything.
Yeah.
We're still counting those as the moving parties now that we're separating them out, making them separate motions. Okay, hold on here, then let me do my bookkeeping.
Didn't work this time, Aaron.
I haven't sent it yet. Things up my
Okay,
mind.
I appreciate that.
Now we've got it.
There we go.
Erickson Gall,
No.
Gershenson,
Yes.
you have 3 yays, 3 nays.
Oh, so we'll, yeah, right, we will have to come back to the table with this one to pursue it if that's what you're interested in, but you're right, motion fails.
You're not gonna have to put down the dogs now, right?
No.
I,
Too soon.
Charlie.
question, process, procedure question?
Of course.
I support advancing. I'm concerned with it failing.
You already voted.
There's no revisiting that vote.
In our early days
Isn't there
as
a rule, well,
commissioners,
maybe
we were.
at the next meeting, if you're on the prevailing side, you actually.
No, that the chair has to vote the right way for that. They have to help be the reason it died.
And I wanna be clear, I do have
Chair, like,
concerns with
that's
this
in the full
item,
board.
for sure. But I also am worried that at timings it fails. And what happens?
Well, it is possible to amend and then you make a new motion and a new vote regarding this, but
But
I
it
don't know
failed
how
for this
much
meeting.
I'm talking right now.
Sorry, my bad.
I don't know how much brain power you can put into that in the next 3 minutes.
I see. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Gershenson.
So what's the timing on this? Is this time sensitive? Can you bring this back or this is?
That's a great question, because obviously if you don't approve it, then we can't pay for them. So I don't know, we haven't been in that situation before. Do we give the donation back? Do we give it back to the breeder? I don't know. We haven't.
Well,
We
I'm
haven't
just
run into
saying,
that,
if it
so.
is revised, if there is some revision and it comes back, is this time sensitive? Do you have to make that decision well, it still, it won't go to the full board. Right, because it doesn't come out of committee.
Right.
So if you were to bring it back at the next LAGO meeting with a few changes, that's what I'm saying, is it time sensitive? can you do that?
I mean, we can, because right now we can't pay for any of their care.
Right.
You can, you have $210 million in your budget, so you can.
But
Just
we-
saying,
you're
like,
not
no,
accepting the,
because-
you're not accepting the donation,
Right, and you've
so-
already had it as a sunk cost, which you're eating in your budget already.
We're
So
not-
like, there isn't $0 in the like pet support account.
Right, but we're not paying for these until, we do not pay a dime for these animals until you accept the donation. So if the donation is not accepted, then we cannot pay for any of their care or any of their needs through the general fund.
Which shouldn't be a problem because you're looking for a donation, so you should not have already received these dogs in your care to then already have costs incurred to care for these dogs. Because you haven't gotten the votes yet to get these dogs, so you shouldn't already have them and be paying for them.
I know, I
So I'm saying we have not paid for
Yeah.
anything yet, but
So it's
we have
fine.
received the dogs, so yes, they are time sensitive,
I
so.
mean, you shouldn't have done that. That's not how this works.
Commissioner Cavalli.
Sorry.
Your comments are valued, but next time
Apologize.
you would need to be acknowledged by the chair to speak.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Nelson.
I'd like to request, can we take a brief recess?
Yes,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
all right, we are recessed.
Do we tell them to go You have
I need a
quorum.
quorum.
No, you have
Oh,
quorum.
you have quorum with me.
Yeah,
I won't leave before
Thank
Charlie.
you. Thank you.
Let me make sure he's added.
Okay, and let me make sure, do we know when Commissioner Cavell went?
No.
Was out in the hallway.
Oh, on the home.
Yeah.
So we're on.
Yes. Okay, so we are
Yes.
out of recess, returning
to her
for
yesterday.
public health and safety
I talked with
meeting.
her yesterday.
So
I talked with Angie.
Are we doing a roll call or?
No, but you might want to mention that Commissioner Woodward's.
yes, and Commissioner Woodward is joining us. Thank you, Chair, for making our next quorum.
For a minute. All right.
Yes,
Okay, so, what, I think there's two things at play here. Like, one, that, I mean, per our policy in this county, donations of a certain value need to, especially with those that have a stranded cost, need to have board approval. And so we took responsibility for these two animals prior to having board approval to do that. So I guess my first question is, why did we do it that way? Why didn't we have board approval before we took the animals?
It's a good question.
Okay, that's a good question. We'll get an answer to that question.
Yes.
Between now and the next board meeting, this is what I would recommend. We will take care of this between now and next Thursday. We'll get an answer to that question, make sure that those things don't happen, but not on the sheriff department, but across the board, that again, donations that have these stranded costs can be done unilaterally. We need to tighten that up, and then we can fix this before the next board meeting. Sound good?
thank you.
Good, okay, so I don't think you need to, I don't think you need to do anything right now. We will take care of this before the next board meeting.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to kind of piggyback a little bit off of what Chairman Woodward said. That was essentially going to be the question that was going to come back after potentially making a motion to reconsider. The fact that we have the dogs before, obviously it came to the board, we approved it. That didn't sit well with me, knowing, well, if this fails, and I hear you, Commissioner Cavell, wholeheartedly, that find money and figure it out. I get that mentality, but also too, I also understand the concern on the other side. We're not sending back 2 therapy dogs to where they came from, right? I don't think that sets a good stance or message. However, I do think it's important as we move forward into the future that we do set a precedence of not accepting animals before it comes to the full board for approval. And I think maybe hopefully we heard that loud and clear today, so hopeful that as we go into the future, we might not have this issue or problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Gershenson?
We still can do a motion to reconsider right now.
Yes.
But Dave said we can do.
We can, somebody who voted no would have to make that motion, or we could
Wait till the board.
gather more information and then do an exception at the board to vote.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to reconsider the vote on item B. There's support, but I'm willing to make that motion.
Well, we have a motion, I'll support it.
Did you vote no? Isn't it?
No, she doesn't have to, it's just the motion.
Okay. All right, would you prompt the vote?
On the motion to reconsider.
Yes.
We're voting simply on whether we're going to reconsider,
Correct.
not the substance of the, okay.
Gershenson?
Motion to reconsider?
Yes. You have 5 yeas, 1 nay.
Okay. So the motion is acceptance of donation for 2 support canine dogs.
I'll make
And
that.
I have a support. Motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Taylor. So would you prompt that vote
Can we have discussion before the vote?
again? Would you like to say something?
Mm-hmm. I think the points that are worth noting is, first, Chair told us we will talk about this before the full meeting, and then like Chair Lube said, this can be something that we do to suspend the rules and pass if the group decides to do that at the board meeting. So there's already a process in place. So we don't need to do anything today. Second, the reason I think we don't need to do anything today, in addition to already having some cover from the chair, is that they went outside our rules. They didn't do the process the way they're supposed to. They, in a sense, like superseded our authority as the board. So if we let this be allowed, that then undercuts our whole like purpose of being here to an extent, not to be dramatic.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Erickson Galt.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just want to be clear. I have no problem in theory with therapy dogs. And I think I agree, they can be a wonderful resource for these traumatic incidences that we're increasingly facing in our society. I echo Commissioner Cavell's statement that we have procedures in place. These procedures are there for a reason. It may seem not that important over something where it's, a needed resource and only $75,000 a year out of our incredibly huge budget. But procedures matter, and, respecting boundaries matter. And then on top of that, I would also like to have some reports and information, how are these dogs being used? I didn't even know what kind of dogs they were based on what was presented to us. I would like to see some more information on why we need 15 dogs. The school systems often, if they even have them, they have one or two, for potentially hundreds or thousands of students, and we've got 15. Why do we need 15? So, before I support adding 2 more dogs to what appears to be a very healthy stock of dogs, I want more information on how they're being used and why we need 2 more, so.
Thank you. Undersheriff, would you like to respond?
I was just gonna address some of
Sure.
what she brought
Sure.
up. We have those 15 dogs. I don't know exactly where each one is, but they're scattered throughout the county. Some are in dispatch. This one will be in dispatch. Some are in schools with our SROs. Some are at the substations and go-to calls with the deputy. And again, we have 12 substations all throughout the county. So they're not all in one location. They're not just for one purpose. So they are therapy dogs, go to scenes. When we first got one of them last year, they went with the deputy to a suicidal subject call who was no longer suicidal after seeing a few puppies. So they are effective. But I didn't want you to think they were just in one location here in the county. They're scattered throughout the county.
And that would be helpful to have that information presented on how they're being used, some specifics. I didn't know that these are being used in schools. I didn't see that in the information that was presented. That would be very helpful to help make this decision. So, because otherwise you have to question, why do we need 15? Won't 2 or 3 or 5 do? So, but also going back to the procedure is important. We can't be putting the cart before the horse, so to speak.
If I may, we are following the spirit of the donation policy. It says that anything, under 10,000, we just reported on a quarterly report. If it's under 10,000 but has ongoing costs, as these do. So I believe with the timing of the breeder and then the timing of the board meetings, because obviously we have to have we have to follow the board calendar. So I think this was the only set of meetings and, the timing. So as soon as we found out that they were available, we got the documentation together and submitted it, so.
Okay. Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Process procedure absolutely matters. I'm not convinced we haven't followed process and procedure in regards to this matter. I hear what you're saying as far as the donation and the dollar amount. That is factual, right? What for me is more of the bigger picture potential problem is the ongoing costs and knowing you know, just especially concluding budget hearings and hearing about the needs of all of our departments, including the sheriff's department. We've got a lot of needs and we don't necessarily have the funds to fit all of those needs. And, you know, when you take a look at trying to trim the fat, and not to say that this is not an important issue or a beneficial issue, but there does and will come a time and place where we do need to have these more difficult kinds of conversations. And I'm not saying, like I said, either way that it's a good thing or a bad thing, but for me, knowing that the ongoing costs, knowing that it's $75,000 as is with the number of canine support animals that we have, that is a lot of money. I also want to just emphasize, it doesn't change my vote where it came for me to come back to the table and reconsider the vote. I think it's unfair to have only 6 members of a board of 19 kill an agenda item because it doesn't advance out of committee. I want to just say it's not going to change my vote, but I also value the process that we do put in place with our committees, and I do believe that it's only fair to let this advance and let this come to the board and have 19 people support or not support. That's important. That's a part of the process and procedure that's most important to me that I value. But at the same time, I want to be clear that I think we can do better in the future. I would like to get more clarification on, you know, are there things that we need to do to maybe amend and insert some additional language in when it does come to those ongoing costs? I don't know, but I also feel like I don't want it to come across as like a finger pointing, because I think there's things on both sides that could be done maybe better in the future. And I look forward to having those conversations and really jumping deep into the weeds to really see what we could do to better reflect some of the concerns that were brought up today. So, thank you.
Commissioner Cabell?
2 things. You mentioned schools and a breeder. There is a terrible problem we have, Mediha knows this, in our animal shelter of having adopted dogs. So you don't get these from the Oakland County Animal Shelter. You get them from a breeder.
Yes, based on their personality and their calmness and their everything. It was researched before this program started because of the way they react with people. So yes, so their
I get you. Yeah, I get your
temperament
point.
is very well documented and known, so that's
Right.
why that was decided.
So you get them from a breeder and not the animal shelter. Do they get their shots or their food from the animal shelter? Or do they come from like somewhere else
We have veterinary contracts
with the shelter?
not with the Oakland County Animal Shelter, no, we have
So-
veterinary clinics.
So not Oakland County, okay. Wow, and then you said schools. Are those part of the SRO and law enforcement service contracts? The cost of their food,
No.
the cost of their care?
So they get assigned to a school resource officer.
Right, but when Rochester Hills Schools says we want an SRO, we do direct and indirect costs now. So does that include the food that the dog
They didn't
needs
have-
to eat to be in the
They didn't
school?
ask for the dog, they just asked for the officer.
But the dog is costing $5,000 a year and
Is
is
it-
at the school,
And indirect costs are now included in the contracts.
and that includes the dog food and like the dog care.
Well, it includes general fund costs in general.
So not necessarily.
Administrative costs, but
So
no, there's
maybe.
not a specific
Okay,
dog food line item for
Okay.
an SRO,
okay,
because not every SRO has a dog.
okay, alright. So then just to reiterate, not using Oakland County stuff exclusively with veterinary or to get the dog. And it's not mentioned in the LES contracts. That's all, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, would you prompt the vote, please? It says there's no ongoing vote.
Okay, we'll just call it real quick. Nelson,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Cabell,
No,
Erickson Gall,
No.
Taylor,
Yes.
Lubes.
Yes,
You have 4 yeas, 2 nays.
all right, motion carries, thank you. The next item we're yes, we're moving on.
No, I think it popped.
It did pop up. Do you want us to vote?
You can go ahead and do it again. Yeah, go ahead, but I think I've got it
Didn't
for you.
pop up.
Oh, this just changed.
Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe don't touch, I don't know.
No, they need to get it off their screen.
This one changed.
Go ahead and just, do the vote you did.
She's got automobile theft popping up,
Yeah, I don't wanna vote.
and I'm not sure,
Hit refresh.
Oh. Which is this little button here.
Okay.
Alright.
Yeah, if I voted on that one.
yeah, I did too.
We've got it.
Okay, all right.
That is our next vote, the grant acceptance from the state of Michigan for the fiscal year 2025 Automobile Theft Prevention Authority Program. Are there any other comments regarding this item before we vote? Commissioner Erickson Galt?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say I am gonna support this because I think I don't wanna, I think it should continue to go forward for now, given how many agencies and so forth are involved in that and that it's been an established program for a while. But I would like to see more information on, I just reiterating my concerns about the danger and the cost for essentially retrieving property that in most cases is insured and replaceable.
Commissioner Gershenson?
So I too want to have it move forward, so I will be supporting it, but I have asked for more information before the board meeting, so if anybody wants to be included in that Zoom meeting or discussion, whatever, before the board meeting, you're welcome to join.
Thank you. Commissioner Cavell?
I just feels appropriate to reiterate, because actually what Ann said kind of further made me more clear on why I think my district and me don't want to vote for this, because, just to say a story, because you talked about your story, one of my neighbors had their car stolen, and then they have the flock system in Ferndale, and which is like cameras that take pictures of your license plate. So they found the car on a flock system in North Dakota, but the car's still gone because it's a stolen car that drives at 100 miles an hour up to, 70 on the highway. So it's already gone. And thanks to them having insurance, they got a new one. They lost the down payment or whatever the difference was, the closing cost. So they lost like $5,000, but they have a new car. So that what you said, Ann, actually just further cemented in my mind. Oh yeah, it is just like someone died for a used car. So I really don't want to vote for this now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Would you prompt the vote, please?
Oops.
Yes.
You have 5 yeas, 1 nay.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for spending your morning with us. Thank you for supporting. Our next items are from Health and Human Services. The first two are grant acceptances. One is from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Fiscal Year 2025 Local Health Department Emergency Threats Agreement. The next grant acceptance is from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Local Health Department Comprehensive Agreement. The next item is an amendment to the agreement with Pontiac Community Foundation for the COVID Regional Health Equity Council Backbone Organization. The next item is the Neighborhood and Housing Development Amendment to the Unlocking Doors Oakland County Policy and Reduce the Allocated American Rescue Plan Local COVID Recovery Funds. And the last item from Health and Human Services is the Neighborhood and Housing Development Reallocation of ARPA Local Fiscal Recovery Funds for emergency shelter capacity and operations. I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson. I have support from Commissioner Gershenson. And, thank you. You are here to tell us about these items.
I am Stacy Sledge. I can take the first 3 items for the Health Division. The first item is allocation from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services for COVID-19 vaccine response, water monitoring, laboratory staffing, and COVID-19 testing and response capabilities, as well as PFAS. This funding for this year was $2,459,816. We did have one of our programs that was no longer funded. That was the ARP Home Visitation Grant. And so therefore, we're requesting to delete one full-time public health nurse. This position was partially funded by the ARP and the Oakland Schools Nurse Family Partnership grant. We were fortunate enough to get additional funding through the local health department agreement for the Nurse Family Partnership program. So this position will be created under the local health department agreement and still partially funded by the Oakland Schools Family Partnership grant. And the next one is our allocation for the mandated and public health services. This year's allocation was $16,922,116. This funding supports the continuation of 58 special revenue positions. We're also looking to create the public health nurse 3 position for the Nurse Family Partnership and 1 public health clerk 3 for the kindergarten oral health program. We also asked for funding in the amount of $607,258 to continue a subrecipient agreement for reimbursement of services for the Women, Infant, and Children's program. We are asking to delete a office support clerk senior position under the WIC program. This position was previously filled by as a PT&E lactation specialist, and it's no longer needed. The last item is a subrecipient award with the Pontiac Community Foundation. The Health Division was awarded funding through the Michigan Public Health Institute Regional Health Equity Grant to establish a Regional Equity Council and a mini grant program to help reduce COVID-19 disparities in impacted communities. We partnered with Pontiac Community Foundation to provide reimbursement for services providing with the creation and administration of the mini grant program and overseeing aspects of the grant timelines as well as payment to the council committee representatives. For this amendment, we are extending the end date to September 30th, 2024, and adding additional $2,000 for additional committee member payments. So overall, it increases their total funding from $200,300 to $202,300. And I can answer any questions. And I also have Shane Baez here if you have any questions about the Pontiac Community Foundation or the Regional Health Equity Grants.
Thank you. Commissioner Cavell?
Thank you, Chair. I just think it's worth noting for all of us, just because we have all these attachments, just to highlight all the work that this department does. So just to say, we have people that do WIC, Women, Infants, and Children, Nurse Family Partnership, lactation specialists, breastfeeding, hepatitis C, HIV prevention, city readiness initiative, maternal children health, like vaccine quality assurance. So I just lift these up to say that there's a bunch of really cool things that our public health department is doing. And again, just to say the budget stuff, 2/3 of this money that goes to fund their department comes from a federal grant. 1/3 is a local match. So just like the child care fund, if we put $1 in, we get $2 back. With the child care fund, if we put $1 in, we get $3 back. So an investment in public health is also an investment in safety. But just to say that it's a 66-33% match. So $1 into public health to help all these people so they don't have to delete the lactation specialist for their next year's grant equals $2 coming back to us, so $3 total in public health. It's amazing leverage and awesome work.
Commissioner Gershenson?
Charlie, I was looking for those specific departments. Which page, or which one of these attachments were you?
11B, and then you go to Schedule B continuation, so that's the like 56 people that they're keeping. The creation, they're creating one new position
What page are you reading?
Attachments,
these attachments. Right here on 11B, and then go to these attachments, the Schedule B, E, D.
Right, so which one of these is what I'm saying?
Continuation.
B, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so those are the people that,
Couldn't find it.
yeah.
Yep, I got it,
Yep,
thank you.
cool.
Anyone else? All right, we could prompt the vote.
This is A, B, and C. Is it
Yeah,
A,
is
B,
this
and C?
all six or just first three?
I thought we talked about them all.
No, sorry.
No.
We can cancel it, yeah.
Okay, all right, who, are you talking about D and E?
Yes, I am.
Oh, thank you, okay.
I want to hear about housing.
Right, yeah, I'll go through it quickly. So today I'd like to respectfully request that you all approve an amendment to our Unlocking Doors Oakland County program to expand the program scope and reduce the program amount from $315,000 to $215,000. This Unlocking Doors is under the Alliance for Housing and our county's continuum of care. Leah McCall, who's the executive director, is online today to answer any questions if there are any. We'd like to request that with this scope expansion and the budget reduction, that we are able to expand the scope to serve more people through adding a web-based platform for housing rental units. So people who are getting services through the Alliance for Housing or receiving a housing choice voucher or working with another community-based housing program will be able to locate units that are available in Oakland County that are willing to rent to them. And we will also continue to provide incentives or support to landlords, which we already have in this current contract, landlord mitigation supports where claims can be made by landlords if there's damages done when they rent units to those who don't have credit. The reason we'd like to reduce the amount is because the money's just not being spent quickly enough. So we've only spent $309,500 to date. And I think this has been in existence for a couple years. So it just makes sense to reduce the amount, expand the scope so that we're serving more broadly. And also move the $100,000 from this contract over into our shelter capacity fund. So that's the next agenda item. So we want to expand our shelter operations and be able to provide additional support with the $100,000 to do shelter operations and provide additional expansion as the cold months approach. Research shows that 1,147 individuals in Oakland County reported experiencing homelessness in 2022. And on any given day, we only have about 220 shelter beds between our operating shelters. And so we have a big gap and we know it. So this is just, once again, another step to help address that. And I'm coming before you today at this time just because we know cold is coming and we want to make sure that we've got these things in place. And so so that kind of tags along with item E, and we would like to reduce and expand the scope for an item D for Unlocking Doors, and then move that $100,000 over to Shelter Expansion Fund.
The Unlocking Doors program, does that pay for security deposits for people?
Leah, I'm going to hand that over to you. Can you answer that?
Yep, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. No, it doesn't. It's just for damages in a rental unit that are over and above a security deposit, working to keep those individuals in that unit and make the repairs needed, or if they have to move, make the landlord whole again so they continue to work with some of our other programs and projects.
Thank you. So if I know it's off this topic, but is there any group in Oakland County that does an assessment and pays for security deposits?
Yes, Leah, I'm going to hand that back over to you because as the Alliance, you all do that. So yes.
Yeah. So we have many programs that help with security deposits, first month's rent, ongoing rent. The voucher list right now is closed through the state, but when that is open, we also help with security deposits when somebody gets a voucher sort of outside of those specific programs within the community, but still making sure that they have access to security deposits because HCV or Section 8 vouchers do not cover security deposits, only rent.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, this might be a silly question, but I want to just make sure I'm understanding this because both of these programs, this one and the next one, are important, right? So it sounds like we're taking money from the Unlocking Doors program and giving it to the shelter item that we'll talk about next. A little concerned because I know how great the Unlocking Doors program was. We've talked a lot about this in the past, right? Are there any concerns taking money from this program? And I don't want to pit it up against, well, what's more important, right? Because they're both very important issues. But I also know that a lot of my constituents have found benefit from the Unlocking Doors program. So can you talk to me about how we came to the conclusion that we don't need the money that we have presently for this program?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. I mean, both are enormously important. So I think the first thing was making sure the scope was expanded in Unlocking Doors to make sure that it's serving more people and that we're able to move a little more nimbly. To full transparency, only $309,500 has been spent. So we're so underspent with this. And and Leah, you can feel free to jump in. I would guess that it's because landlords aren't filing claims, which I think maybe the assumption that damages are done to these units from people who are holders of housing choice vouchers or are part of community-based housing programs isn't maybe as broad as originally thought, like, that those claims aren't being filed. So, I mean, Leah, you could chime in. I would just say that those damages aren't really maybe as much of an issue as initially thought. So we wanted to expand the scope to allow landlords to post available units to encourage more people to be able to find units that will accept those vouchers, as well as make sure that they're motivated to post them and work with the continuum of care.
And also there's an ARPA constraint, right? We have to spend all ARPA fundings by the December of 2026. So based on when the program started it was passed by the board in 2021. It took a minute to get, because it's such a novelty, Oakland County again ahead of the curve to finalize the contract with Alliance. So based on the current spending, this was a projected move that, there will be enough sufficient funding to finish by December of 2026 and shelter can use it for sure as well.
Just as one more question, was there any consideration to use some of that money that hasn't been used to increase awareness to landlords of the, programs that we have at the county that are there to help offset those costs from any damages done to their property?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And in fact, with this new scope, that is part of the idea. So by making a web-based platform where they can post units, they have to work even closer with Leah and her team at Alliance. The whole idea is that we'll be doing a lot of individualized outreach to say, hey, this is what's available. Can we work with you? Can you post units online? There's some funding that's available to you for doing this, and there's also funding if there are damages to our mitigation fund. So part of this web-based platform is going to allow for that outreach and allow for a more visible presence, I think, so that landlords know they can come to the county and that they can take advantage of this. And it's gonna help both ways, I think. It's a great question.
So is there money still available for landlords to come forward in, let's say, December?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we're not changing,
So
we're not exhausting it, we're just expanding it so that we can have a broader reach and we're not just limited and tied to the mitigation, but we also can expand it to this web-based platform where the units will be listed, users and beneficiaries can take advantage and landlords can also post what's available real time.
I appreciate
This is the change for the policy to amendment.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Cabell?
Thank you, Chair. Leah or Khadija, do you know about how many people are on the voucher waiting list right now that are looking for a place to live but can't find a landlord that will rent to them, that this Unlocking Doors program is supposed to help?
I know it's about a 26-month waiting period normally when it's open, but Leah, I don't have the numbers in front of me for that. I don't know if that's something you can speak to.
Sure. Let me just start with sort of the terms. I think when you say voucher, I think of a Section 8, which is now called the Housing Choice Voucher, and there are none right now through the state. Some of the housing commissions, they still have some, but the state has totally stopped that. They have dropped everyone off the wait list. We're doing no recertifications. They are pulling no one. That was about 300 people that we had on there and the preference in our county through those funds is homeless being the priority. So those are not here. They are scheduled to come back sometime in 2025. So vouchers are sort of off the table right now, if you will. But we do have other housing programs that help with security deposit, first month's rent, ongoing rent, depending on the severity of need. Some of them require a documented disability. Some of them are more for individuals who may have lost their job or had some, things happen in between, and maybe they ended up losing their housing, getting them back on their feet. And we also have some prevention dollars to help prevent evictions. So those are still happening. I would have to pull some numbers, but I would say on that, which is sort of a separate list, then the vouchers, we probably have about 300 to 400 people who are eligible for those types of housing programs in the community, and probably about 100 of them have been pulled for housing slots and are looking for housing. But typically, to answer your question the way you asked it, when we have those vouchers in our community, every 3 that go out, 2 come back unused because they're unable to locate a landlord that will work with them. So we're hoping this platform will offer more security to the landlord, to the person looking sort of a streamlined place, and then also have some, incentive type items if there are damages or things like that.
Okay, so if I hear you right then, for these 2 things, it's that right now, for the 400-ish families that could benefit from this program, the Unlocking Doors, they'll say, I want to rent from you, landlord. The landlord will say, for every 3 people that go out, 2 landlords will say no. And so Unlocking Doors is trying to incentivize, or the app is trying to help encourage communication so that less landlords will deny people with vouchers housing.
Yes,
and
correct.
So,
vouchers or any housing program that we have funding for.
Okay, so this is a way to make it more profitable for landlords to rent to poor people.
In a nutshell, we're trying to streamline that process and also have some accountability on the side for the landlords and for the person looking. There's this sort of all in one place. You're not just getting a list of numbers to call. Landlords aren't saying, I will work with this program or agency and not this one. I mean, they still could do that, but it's really sort of opening it up to be sort of like you would look on, rent.com to find a rental unit, but these will be specifically for programs within the COC and vouchers and those type of housing opportunities that are available for homeless or individuals that are low income.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson.
Last question of clarification. Going off of the numbers within this agenda item, we've only spent $6,000 for the Unlocking Doors program?
Yes.
That seems incredibly low. And I say this because at the onset of us creating this program, it was highly sought and wanted, which is what drove. What happened? I mean, $6,000? That's concerning. What's going on?
I think that is exactly the right question, which is, Leah was here historically prior to me, and can maybe speak to that, but I think there's only been 3 claims. So I think the question is, if we know there's a need, we know people need to rent units, we know we need landlords at the table. If this isn't working, what do we need to change in the current scope to incentivize and encourage people to come to the table? So I think, that's the idea of this here today is, we know there's a need. Obviously, there's a disconnect somewhere. So is it that maybe the claims aren't what we anticipated or thought that they really were? Or is it just that we need to do a better job making it easy to use with this web-based platform where it's very clear, it's kind of marketing itself because there's now something out there visible for both sides to utilize to help get it out, the word out in Oakland County. So I mean, because exactly what you said, it's, very underspent. The question is, well, what do we need to change and how do we need to make this more impactful and effective? So
I appreciate that, thank you. I do have concerns though, because I go back to the early conversations of this. This was something that was highly sought out from our landlords. And really, we had a larger discussion on how do we increase landlords who accept those vouchers to welcome all tenants, right? With a little bit of assurance with some of the stereotypes and stigmas that can come along from a landlord's perspective. I'm concerned that potentially there are things that we could still do to promote this program for landlords, because I do recall many constituents had come forward for myself initially on the awareness piece, getting the information. How do I learn more about this program? And so I have to believe that if more people have we put the time, energy, and resources before moving this money over to another really important, program, but what are we doing with advertising and increasing and getting out into our communities where we know that there's a high number of renting and landlord households? Can we say that we've really done our due diligence in promoting this program before we go to the next extreme of giving a large chunk of this money to another program?
Leah, are you comfortable speaking to kind of historically what you all have done through the Alliance with promoting it and marketing it and kind of the feedback you've received from landlords?
Sure. So to start, before it became this initiative, we did a lot of surveys and talking to landlords and exactly what you're saying. What do they want? And this was the main concern: damages. People are going to ruin my units. Damages, damages, damages. So that's sort of how it came into place, right? And then we thought, what is a good number to show there that there's enough funds in this allocated to have landlords be like, oh, there's a good chunk of money in there, so it seems like a good risk, right? There'll be funds available for me if I need it. And then the way the grant actually was written out was a little bit more narrow as a pilot, because we didn't know what that would look like. And so it did only cover specific things like, a couple specific programs to pilot it. So if we were going to change something, that would be the first thing that I would open it up to any program that somebody is working with instead of just a small number.
And that is, I just say real quick that we did change that in the scope to be broader, to say community-based housing program. So it wasn't limited to the vouchers, which is on hold right now anyways with the state. So, okay, go ahead. Sorry, Leah.
Yeah, no, you're fine. And then what we found was after we did this, put this out there, went back to those same landlords who did the surveys, those same, community meetings, those same meetings that we held and gave the information out, we didn't really get the ask that we thought we would have. So was it just a false sense of people are going to damage my units and that wasn't happening? Is it they weren't taking the time to fill it out? Did we not do a great job at getting to the landlords who needed this information? So I think your questions are valid. I will say we did have about 5 or 6 reach out. 3 were in other counties, so those didn't work. And the ones that were here, we were able to work with and alleviate. And then we did have one that was through a housing commission, and that wasn't part of this pilot. So we sent them to that housing commission that the landlord was working with to talk to them about some damages that wasn't covered under what this fund could do at the time, the way it was written. So could we do more and go out broader? Absolutely. And I think that's what we're hoping to do here now. And I think that the funds will still be there, and I think that will still be a draw. But, and I think Barbara had maybe mentioned too, there is a time limit to these funds, so they have to be spent by this certain deadline. I would love to have these funds sit here longer, because I do think the need is there, and I think we can engage more and do that. But I think the scope of this specific pot of money is tied to a time frame as well.
I guess I'm a little confused, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Leah. I must be missing something, because I hear the bigger, yes, of course, these are great questions, and yes, we can further enhance some of those areas that are a concern, but we're taking money away from one and giving it to the other with the overall bigger picture. And I'm so sorry, I'm processing it as I'm saying it, but it doesn't make sense to me that there's agreement with some of the things that we've just heard, and the bigger picture will allow this to happen. I'm not wrapping my head around how this moving the money will contribute to the overall bigger picture of assistance, because I feel like the way I view it is you're taking money from a program that was deemed very valuable and highly wanted, and now we're taking money from that, putting it to something else, but it'll impact the bigger picture of the concerns being brought up. That's where I'm getting confused a little bit.
Commissioner Cavell?
I can help. So I think the thing is, first when this came up, the whole goal and the intention, as Leah kind of said, but she has to use bigger words, right? Because she represents a big group of nonprofits in housing. The simplest way to say this was a safety net for landlords who don't believe that people on vouchers or poor people will respect their property. So then the landlord said, I need you to give me like $3,000 or $5,000 as a backstop in case a poor person spray paints the apartment. And then what happened is this program was extremely successful because only 3 people did something that caused property damage that are poor people that were part of this program. And so the whole point was this is gonna be a pot of money that's gonna be a backstop to convince landlords to rent to poor people. Because their biggest concern, as Leah said, was poor people will disrespect my space. Comes to find, only 3 poor people disrespected the space.
Or landlords aren't aware of the resources.
Well, like Leah
yeah.
said, there are people from other counties. Also, Leah has monthly meetings with the Landlord Guild and regular conversations with all the landlords. I've been at meetings with people with Leah that have 20,000 apartment units in Metro Detroit, and there are multiple people in that meeting. So there's 60, 80,000 apartment units represented. So like, they are talking to landlords. And that's how they were able to get this project, which is, look, put a few $100,000 down to make sure that if I rent to poor people, that I'll get my money back if they mess up my spot. Now what they're finding is, because like Barbara said, the ARPA money's time limited, and we're sure not using general fund for this, which we are using for the dogs, but we're not using general fund for this. So this is ARPA, it's time limited. So now you have $309,000 that you gotta figure out what to do with, because we can either put it someplace else in a different department, or we can send it back to the feds.
I appreciate
So this is the new idea.
I
is
appreciate
just
that because it's
basically-
the time,
yeah.
it's the time, right? If you're telling me
Yes.
that only 3 even if it was, we could do better with awareness and this and that.
Totally.
Hearing you highlight, Commissioner, the time frame,
I see you.
I get it.
I see you.
So,
I
thank
understood
you.
you. Yeah, I got you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Eric Singal?
Thank you, Chair. So what I'm hearing is that perhaps what we were told initially about this fear of damage was perhaps a smokescreen for some other reasons why they're choosing not to rent to impoverished people.
It's crazy.
Which may or may not be justifiable from their business perspective on why they're choosing not to rent, but this did not operate as a proper incentive program because we were told that they needed this incentive and then coming to find out they didn't really need this incentive. And so what perhaps maybe what we need to look at is what else could we do as an incentive to private landlords to rent to people, which if I understand correctly, this is strictly for people who are receiving government assistance to pay for their rent. This is not like me going out and paying, who's earning a salary and I can afford to pay rent. This isn't covering your typical private transaction. This is only applying to people who are receiving some sort of government assistance to cover their rent. So what I'm hearing is whatever that magic incentive might be to try to get private landlords to accept renters who are relying on government assistance, this wasn't the incentive program that we thought it would be. So to not lose the funding and have to send ARPA funding and send it back, we're gonna shift it to another program where we know it will definitely get used.
And as Leah said, the money in Unlocking Door, like we were not planning to repair this was just a safety blanket, right? There was like, as Leah said,
Insurance
pot of
policy.
money, exactly, yeah, so.
Responsive though to what we heard was a valid need to hopefully help with the stigma.
So it worked. It not being spent worked. It, you know.
In the sense that we kind of blew away the smokescreen.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree to that.
Any other comments? Commissioner Cabral?
Just one quick note, just so we have solidarity with people that get government assistance, just because you said something. All of us in this room do get government assistance. It just comes every 2 weeks, direct deposit, just a clarification.
So I
we
can
know
go
where we
home?
are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Would you prompt them? Oh, Commissioner Taylor.
The only other thing that came to my mind is if the process to recover these funds is too complicated. I don't know. Because sometimes people don't even try if it takes too much work for them to do. And I don't know what that process is. But that's something else to look at.
That's a good point.
Well, part of the process, I think they have to document first that they worked with Alliance for Housing, is that right?
Yeah. And Leah, you can, go ahead.
They have to say that they had worked with the case manager that helped that person into housing into that unit, right? That's a part of the continuum of care. So a housing agency like Lighthouse or CHN or Voucher, et cetera, and that it exceeds the damages and then it's reimbursement. So they would have to make the repair and then we would reimburse back with a copy of the paid receipts. So it wasn't a lot. I mean, it would be things they would have to do anyway to lease, or re-rent it. But it was, those three things: work with the person, the case manager, make the repairs, and then submit the receipts for reimbursement.
Just a thought, I was just saying it's something to look at, because sometimes maybe they can't reach the case manager. I don't know. Just take a look at the process sometimes, that's.
Yeah, that's true. And and of course the tenant was part of that too, right? If they were working to keep the tenant there. Sometimes, we had one case that the tenant ended up leaving and we repaired the unit anyway, so the tenant was not part of that equation, but.
One time,
thank you.
Leah, what's the contact number for Alliance for people to call to seek help?
So we don't have any direct assistance, so it's not our number to call for this specific landlord. I can get it so it can go out in your minutes. It's our email address. They would reach directly to me right now. And then I engage with the landlord, make sure I connect them with the agency if they aren't connected to the agency. So to your point, if they can't get a hold of the case manager, I ask who they're working with and then I make that connection. So it's not a number they call because we really don't do any direct services. We are sort of like that middle piece that helps coordinate services and then does work directly with the landlord and the agency for this funding.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm sorry, say it again.
Have we talked about E yet?
No, we haven't talked about E.
God bless Erin.
Thank you, moving on to E. Thank you, Erin.
So with the proposed and requested reduction from unlocking doors, we would like to request that the $100,000 be added to our emergency shelter capacity. And the reason is once again, we know we're coming upon our colder months. As I shared kind of earlier, we have at any given time approximately 220 beds with our shelter units and almost 1,200 people reported homeless based on research. And so with the $100,000, we'd like to have that support new shelter operations and additional expansion just to meet the need that is very large. And so, and once again, we know that we will meet the spending deadline because they are SLRF ARPA funds, so that is not going to be a problem on the shelter side as well, timing wise.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Erickson Gall.
Thank you, Chair. This is probably one of those things that I do hear from my constituents about, the need for emergency housing. Does this program include, in addition to shelters, or perhaps it's a different program that provides people with perhaps vouchers to get a hotel room just so that they're not on the street for the night? Is this part of that?
Yes, yeah, it's kind of all encompassed in that fund. So yes, you are correct.
And how do we get out there to the public that this is available? Because where I see it typically is like I'll be on social media and somebody will be like, my lease is up, I can't find a new landlord, how do I get? And I always refer them to the county emergency housing website. But what are we doing to make sure people know that this is available?
Yeah, so because Alliance administers that portion with the hoteling, I'll let you speak to that, Leah, because I know we just finished up the RFP in August. The shelters themselves or the housing organizations themselves are the ones that apply for the funds so that they can manage it with the people that come to them that are struggling, with homelessness and need support services. And so that's kind of the pathway. But Leah, I'll let you speak a little bit more to that process piece.
Sure. So a couple different ways. Just like you mentioned, if they're coming to shelter and if the shelter is full, they're able to utilize these dollars in-house to then put that family or person into a hotel. We also have a few new community partners that, maybe faith-based, that can open up their doors and, have some cots and mats for those coldest months so people are not outside. And then some that are working, within the capacity to do some hotel stays outside of the shelters that are working with people that they may come in contact that are homeless. I wouldn't say that we advertise it in the way you're describing because, $85 a night for a week in the hotel, sometimes 2 rooms, depending on family size, like this money doesn't go very far. So we're just really targeting those coldest months when we don't want people to be outside. We don't want them to be outside ever, but we don't want them to be outside in those coldest months. So we still have a gap, right? There's still not enough to house the over 1,000 people that become homeless every year with the addition of these funds, but it helps those individuals move through the process. Sometimes we're able to move them when shelter beds open up, so then we can open up a slot, if you will, for another hotel stay, or move them out of the church that they, were staying in into the shelter and kind of rotate individuals that way. But if someone came in December and we had these funds till, let's just say, March, and they couldn't find housing in that time, they're in that hotel room or that, church or that shelter the entire time. So a bed is not even opening up and we're spending funds on that specific family or household the entire time. So once it's full, right, it's full unless they're moving out into housing. So it's really that 2-prong of how do we help have enough shelter beds to get people safe and out of the elements, and then how do we get them out of those, hotel rooms and shelter beds into housing? So we're working both sides to kind of move that bottleneck through.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question, is what are we doing to get them into something more permanent? And, what can we do to try to, find, because what I hear a lot from is people are, because of, some of the issues we talked about earlier, it's not that there aren't units out there. Obviously we have a shortage of units, but it's that if somebody has bad credit, if somebody has a history of being evicted, they're gonna have a really hard time finding a permanent placement.
Which is why the earlier thing with the unlocking doors, kind of that twofold piece, like you're absolutely right, so that's why it's so important that we have thoughtful platform or a way to try and make it easier for people to find units, or landlords that will work with populations that might don't have the credit. So yeah.
Commissioner Cabell.
Well, just to what you were saying, what can we do? Our budget is our value statement. I know I say this a lot, but the housing department's budget is $16 million, 16. Again, other budgets are 6 figures in the millions, right? Sheriff is gonna be 210 this year. IT is gonna be 90 this year. Theirs is 16 million. And all of that money comes from federal government in the form of CDBG, home, and ESG. So there's $0 from our local property taxes from our general fund that goes to pay for housing. Basically, maybe with this new housing stuff, there's $150,000 for hoteling. These 2 things are short-term federal ARPA things that have to be spent by 2026. So what can we do? We can do a whole bunch of things to prevent these sorts of problems about being evicted or bad credit. Because Leah ran a $100 million program, again funded through the federal government during COVID, that kept people, the almost 18,000 households in Oakland County that were in the CERA program, COVID Emergency Rental Assistance. For 18 months, Leah signed $100 million worth of checks to keep people, which went right to landlords, by the way, many of whom own like 10, 20,000 units, to keep people from becoming homeless. 18,000 families. It was like 17,700. But that's all federal money. It's gone. All the credit stuff, Leah's gotten grants to do that, but it's all gone because it's grants from the feds. Khadijah's staff is funded through federal grants. If that goes away, it's gone. Because we don't put any of our local dollars, any sizable amount, more than like the $150K for hoteling that's new this year, into housing. And there also isn't the cool match like with the health department or the child care fund for the courts. So if we put $1 into housing, it's $1 into housing that also stays in our community, by the way.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we just get some clarification on the timeline of the ARPA dollars needing to be spent? What year does the ARPA money need to be spent by?
26.
It does, I gotta say, I was thinking 2025. Hearing that it is 2026,
Allocated by 25, spent by 26.
Allocated by 24.
Oh, allocated this year,
Yes.
spent by 26, okay.
okay, so that kind of just added more information because what I am having, I'm having some concerns with the Unlocking Doors program. I hear that we've only had 3 applicants. I'm not convinced we've set it up to put landlorders at a success, even looking from the app. We don't have an application process, it's an email, right? So when I see little things that are potentially deterring landlords, I truly do believe that there is value with this, and I'm out of no disrespect. The added layer that was just shared was that it has to be allocated, right? So I would like to request to separate item D, and not to say that I have some learning to do. I want to just go back to my communities, go back to some, conversations that I've previously had in regards to my landlords, and I just want to make sure that in good faith, we have, in fact, there's still money left, right? But I just don't feel comfortable at this moment supporting it. I just need to go back into my community and get some more information, so.
So we'll separate D and E and vote on A, B, and C when it's time to vote.
We already did.
You did vote on A, B, and C.
We already did that.
I thank you, Chair. They're kind of tie-barred, because E is not gonna happen unless D happens.
Right. Right.
So-
Not really, so if we, oh, yeah.
Yeah, you
Oh,
have
I
to-
get-
Right.
sorry,
So we're gonna
yeah, sorry,
separate
no, no.
and vote on A, B, and C.
It's coming
and
from
then
D to go into E,
We already voted on A, B, and C.
didn't we?
We have not voted on anything from the health,
Correct.
anything from health at all yet.
Okay, all right,
my
all
bad.
right.
Yes.
But good point. So both of those items, I guess I would like to request to be separated from 11A.
Will you prompt the vote on Health and Human Services recommendations A, B, and C?
We're foreseeing the future, Madam Chair.
Kirshenson,
Yes.
Erickson Gall.
Yes.
You have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, those 3 items passed. Let's prompt the vote on D, on D.
And do you need together?
We could do them together. Was thinking if D failed, there's no reason to go to that.
So if I can make a request, if you all are saying that you want more information and you'd prefer to table those 2 together for more information, that is an option that we have. So I just wanna bring clarity, depending on whatever you're requesting, from that standpoint, so. Cause they are tied together, D and E are tied together, but we wanna make sure that you all have what you need information-wise in order to make, an informed decision based on what I hear you saying, Commissioner Nelson. So depending, Chair, I'll leave it to your discretion, but that is an option that we can put on the table, based on previous discussions, so.
Thank you. Are we voting on D or having more conversation? Commissioner Cavell.
I mean, if I could, I think to reiterate shorter what I think they've all been saying and I mentioned about D is that it's a reimbursement. So the whole point was for it never to have spent down the money, right? Landlord said, I don't trust poor people to take care of my property, so I need a backstop, this fund. Turns out only 3 people needed help with that. So now, because the deadline's coming up, we need to stop reimbursing landlords and start basically giving landlords checks to give poor people housing in their empty units. So when you do go talk to your landlords, just making sure that it's like, instead of reimbursing you if someone were to mess something up, which did not happen with this for 2 years, now what'll happen is we're gonna give you a check so that you can be incentivized directly on the front end to give people housing. Does that help clarify it?
Sure.
Okay.
The information provided here in this meeting, for, at least for me, has been very helpful. Where I just wanna make sure I'm doing my due diligence is to my constituents that
Sure.
have brought up, right?
So when you, yeah,
It's not so much matter, I don't agree with what was said today. I just wanna make sure, go back into my community, because this was such a big issue and desire. So I just wanna make sure I'm doing my due diligence.
cool, okay.
But I appreciate and I hear what you're saying, but all the information today has been very helpful.
Yeah.
It's just not about hearing more information
I get you.
internally, but it's just going out into the community and doing.
Checking in with the landlord.
Commissioner Gershenson?
Can I call for the vote?
Yes. Would you prompt the vote on D?
On D only, okay.
Yes.
You have 5 yeas, 1 nay.
All right, that passes. Would you prompt the vote on E?
Catching up here. Gershenson,
Yes.
you have 5 yeas, 1 nay.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your information.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. On our agenda, our next item is a public service recommendation. It's acceptance from the Michigan Department of Education for the 24-25 Child Nutrition Program. I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Taylor, and we have Heather and Lori here to talk to this item.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. Children's Village has applied for and been awarded 2 USDA Child Nutrition Program grants, specifically the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program and the Child and Adult Care Food Program grant. We've been applying for these grants and receiving reimbursement from MDE for more than a decade. These are annual requests, and reimbursement covers breakfast, lunch, and after-school snacks. The grant amount is unknown at the time of acceptance because meal claims do vary based on our census. However, this year's grant request is expected to be approximately $225,000. We're here today to ask that you respectfully approve this grant acceptance.
Thank you. Questions or comments regarding this item? Questions or comments regarding this item? All right, would you prompt the vote, please?
You have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've arrived at our last public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Is there any other business to come before this committee?
Nice job, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Appreciate the dialogue and conversations.
It is good information. Seeing no other business, this meeting is adjourned at 12:43.